FrogbitBlog.
Well, bloody hell, me van me, it's episode 60 already. Welcome to episode 60 of the FrogbitBlog. You know what I mean. We've got no Len again. I think I've been dumped by sexy Len. But we have got lots of usual features. So listen on, eh? Because it's quite good.
FrogbitBlog.
So wolves have made it back to Belgium, and there was one pair been found and they started to breed. But yes, you've guessed it, they've been killed by hunters. Is there anything more depressing in this world? I don't even know why I'm laughing. Anything more depressing in this world that there's a percentage of human beings that still like killing animals for fun? It's awful, isn't it? But on a happier note, the bats are back. Yep, one of Britain's and Northern Europe's rarest and most elusive animals has been discovered living in the east of England for the first time in 115 years. Yeah, they've got a little flat above a shop. No, actually, the return to Kent of the Greta horseshoe bat has delighted and astounded conservationists who are now examining whether climate change is shifting the species' range. The bat is normally found only in Wales and in the west of England. This secretive, buff-coloured creature is one of Britain's biggest bats. It frequently evades and challenges pursuers, fluttering unseen through shadows and hiding underground in caves, tunnels and occasionally buildings, before turning into human form and biting people on the neck. Well, I did that bit, obviously. Listen to this. The creature's distinctive alien-like ultrasonic warbling sounds were recorded at two locations near the coast during May and June by two separate teams of bat ecologists. Alien-like ultrasonic warbling. That's going to be the name of my next album. The Bat Conservation Trust says good farm and landscape management can mean huge potential for the Greater Horseshoe. They need woodland, a lack of light pollution, pesticide-free grazed pasture with chemical-free dung harbouring dung beetles, as well as moths, cockchafers and flies, plus tall continuous hedgerows that are not trimmed for up to 10 years. Good luck with finding all of that in Britain. But anyway, positive news.
The FrogbitBlog.
So, what's Britain good at? Well, this week, after reading an article, I suggest that we're really, really good at appeasing and kissing the arses of murderous dictators. Can there be a more of an abhorrent regime than the Saudis? The Saudis, bombing kids in the Yemen, promoting an extreme form of Islam called Wahhabism, and they set up these schools all over the world in poor countries. They have a really backward attitude to women and women's rights. Oh, they murder journalists as well. You name it, they're pretty awful, and we just love them, don't we? We love them, we do. We can't get enough of their company. They're our kind of bad guys, aren't they? Hey, Saudis have blown up the World Trade Center in an aeroplane. Really? Yeah. Quick, let's invade Iraq. Anyway, what reminded me of this was this story I read in the papers this week about Thatcher and her murderous buddy, General Pinochet of Chile. Remember Mrs. Thatcher, woman of last century? Oh, she was so ahead of her time, did great things to advance the cause for women. Well, no, she didn't, did she? She just reminded us all that women can be horrible, callous twats too. Anyway, if you don't know, General Pinochet was the Chilean dictator who, with American help, overthrew a democratically elected socialist government in Chile. That wasn't his main claim to fame. He also rounded up thousands of trade unionists and left-wingers inside a football stadium and murdered them, tortured and murdered them. Yeah, a mass murderer. And when he finally got done for this, he virtually got off by claiming senility. Anyway, this was the story of lovely Margaret Thatcher and her best buddy, General Pinochet. While he was under house arrest in Surrey in 1999, the former Chilean military dictator Augusto Pinochet received a fine malt from an old friend. "Scotch is one of British institution that will never let you down," read the accompanying note from its sender, the former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. The detail revealed this week in the third volume of Charles Moore's biography of Baroness Thatcher adds further colour to the close relationship between Thatcher and a man responsible for the death of more than 2,000 people and the torture of many more. Thatcher was appalled that the Labour government had allowed the arrest of Pinochet while he was in London for medical treatment, overriding his diplomatic immunity. How awful of the Labour government, eh? I don't know when or how this tragedy will end, told Thatcher in 1999 Conservative Party conference to warm applause. A tragedy, yep. They're calling the locking up of a murderous dictator a tragedy. But we will fight on for as long as it takes to see Senator Pinochet return safely to his own country. The British people still believe in loyalty to their friends. You heard that, loyalty to mass murderers, eh? This is the sort of the moral compass that Margaret Thatcher had. Some nice friends we've got there, eh? Lovely lady, that Margaret Thatcher, isn't she? Wouldn't hurt no one, she wouldn't. Proper Christian, nice conservative lady, God rest her soul. Twat.
Her name is Gaia. The temperature is getting higher. Very soon she'll be on fire. So don't be a climate then.
Yes, Mother Earth, her name is Gaia. Her temperature is getting higher, but people are fighting back because there's more Extinction Rebellion stuff happening as we speak, live on air. People are getting arrested left, right and centre. So listen to this. This happened a few days ago. Extinction Rebellion activists have sprayed 1,800 litres of fake blood on the Treasury building in Westminster. Protesters used an out-of-commission fire engine to drench the front of the building in red liquid and also erected a banner that read, "Stop funding climate death." They splattered the main HM Treasury building on Horse Guards Road in London for several seconds until they lost control of the hose, drenching a bystander. Oh no, a bystander got drenched. Call the whole thing off, eh? If someone's going to get wet, then it's really not worth trying to save the world, is it? Come on, parking up pink boats and gluing yourself to a bollard is just fine. But getting an innocent bystander wet, that's just taking it too far. Nothing is worth that. Nothing. Anyway. Where was that? Right. Yep. They ended up spraying fellow activists as 1,800 litres of an organic liquid containing beetroot spurted out wildly across the street. After about 15 minutes, dozens of police officers arrived and arrested 4 activists, telling them to be careful until they could safely be brought down from the vehicle. Mark Ovland, one of the protesters, said he was prepared to be jailed for the action. There needs to be a real wake-up in terms of the money being spent by the government, he said from the top of the out-of-commission fire engine. Decisions being made in this building are going towards a non-future. We're funding billions in fossil fuel subsidies and carbon-intensive projects, and we just need a rethink, otherwise we are in serious danger. The group said the UK remained the largest fossil fuel subsidiser in the EU, surprise, surprise, and highlighted a recent report by a Commons committee that said the government credit agency was undermining the country's international climate and development targets. UK's support for fossil fuel energy is unacceptably high, with the majority of investments in projects in low and middle income countries, it read. This risks locking them into high carbon dependency for decades to come. So well done, Extinction Rebellion people. And this is interesting. Extinction Rebellion farmers. I was also reading this article about farmers who are supporting Extinction Rebellion here in the UK. And there was a little interview with one of them. And one of them was a buffalo farmer. I'm not really sure what that involves. I thought it was a Bob Marley song, to be fair. Anyway, or maybe they use the milk to make buffalo mozzarella. I don't know. This is what it says. Farmers are joining climate change protest group Extinction Rebellion. They say agriculture has been unfairly criticised, and want to highlight the work being done and the fact that they are one of the industries worst affected by climate change. Dagan James, a buffalo farmer from Broughton in Hampshire, was involved in Extinction Rebellion events in April, and he and other farmers came away believing not enough was being done to put the side of farmers across. Farming produces about 10% of the UK greenhouse gas emissions, but the National Farmers Union have set a target of net zero emissions by 2040. So it's actually quite good to see the NFU being a bit more progressive, because obviously they're traditionally a reactionary right-wing bunch of old farts. And I saw this from last week as well when Greta Thunberg was in the good old US of A, that people are now wearing Make America Greta Again baseball caps. How cool is that? And while there's all this hatred, this Greta hatred from mainly all white men, I heard this really good stretch from Australia the other day, and I'm sure they won't mind if I play it. I will put the links in the show notes so you can listen to the rest of the stuff that they do, but have a listen to this.
Hi, I'm a middle-aged man with an embarrassing problem. I get irrationally angry at a Swedish girl who wants to save the planet. Luckily, there's now a number I can call.
Hello, you've called the Greta Thunberg Helpline.
If you're a grown adult who needs to yell at a child for some reason, the Greta Thunberg Helpline is here to tolerate you.
She's just fueling needless anxiety. She's making the end of the world sound like it's the end of the world.
This whole charade's gone too far. Now I see she's speaking in front of a mock UN.
So that was the real UN.
So before you go full caps lock in an article comment section, let our expert counsellors assess your situation.
Sir, I just need to ask you some questions before we get started. Is your Twitter profile picture an egg?
Yeah, but I just don't have any good photos of my face.
We'll listen no matter how ridiculous you sound.
Well, if she really is such a nice, sweet, caring Swedish girl, how come she can't help me assemble my Billy bookcase?
Yeah, but if she's so concerned about renewable energy, how come she doesn't wear one of those baseball caps with the solar panels and the fan on the front?
They said this Ladybird film was a comedy. Well, I didn't laugh once.
Sir, I think you're after the Greta Gerwig helpline.
99% on Rotten Tomatoes. 99%.
I'll patch you through.
It's okay. We understand that children acting like adults can make adults act like children.
I think if I'm honest, I'm just jealous that she got a free cruise to America.
Sir, she actually sailed there herself.
Well, I don't know why she gets to fist bump Obama when I've never gotten to.
Have you considered launching your own significant global movement?
But it's so much easier to shit on someone else's.
We shouldn't be listening to a child. We should be listening to an expert.
Oh, right. Well, do you want me to put you through to an expert? Hello?
The Greta Thunberg Helpline, because when it comes to climate change, we all know she's the real problem.
Pretty spot on. And that'll do for this week's climate sketch.
She's on fire, her name is Gaia, she's on fire, her name is Gaia. A mycorrhizal cowboy. 'Cause autumn is here, so it's into the woods I go. A mycorrhizal cowboy. 'Cause fungus and mushrooms, I've heard they're really good for my health. Unless I end up poisoning myself.
Yeah, I'm the mycorrhizal cowboy. So this is going to be a regular feature over the next few months as I've started foraging, as they say in the trade. Yep, I'm risking my life for a mushroom. If you remember last year, I reported on the fly agaric, or is it the fly agaric? I don't know, which is a double-edged sword of mushrooms because it's both toxic and hallucinogenic. Ooh, there's a quandary. And if you remember, I told you that the Siberian tribespeople used to use this mushroom recreationally. So they fed it to their reindeer who pissed it out and they got rid of the toxin. So it pissed it out toxin free and they'd collect the urine in a bucket and then drink it to get high. So that's how they spent their Saturday nights, getting high on hallucinogenic reindeer piss. Hey, way to go, eh? Anyway, I'm not foraging for psychedelic highs, right? I'm foraging for edible mushrooms and just generally learning the names of all the fungi, edible or not. And look, I know there's a risk involved, so I'm taking it slowly. And there are several mushrooms and fungus that appear in certain places that have no poisonous lookalikes. So I'm feeling I'm on pretty safe ground. I'm not only taking the edible ones. I'm photographing all the ones I see to try and identify them. And there's lots of good websites out there. I go on to one called wildfooduk.com, which also has YouTube videos embedded in it, which is great because then you can see them live, as it were, picking the mushrooms live. And there's also a few Facebook mushroom ID groups that I've been sending my pictures to if I'm not sure. And with the ones I plan to eat, what I do is I take a little nibble, just a little nibble, when I get them home, wait to see if I get ill or drop dead. Then if I don't drop dead, I cook them later on. And I've had a few now, but I'll just talk about one an episode, just so I can drag the series out a bit. And if you're a city dweller, don't despair. Don't go say, oh, this is all for you country folks. Don't despair if you're a city dweller, because some of the tastiest ones in the UK is actually grow in cities and on grass verges and stuff. And that is the shaggy ink cap, yeah, which I've, funnily enough, have hardly seen since I moved out into the country, but I used to see all the time in the city. Anyway, I'll save that for another day. But if you do see shaggy ink caps, you can eat them as long as you do it quick before they turn into ink. And obviously check you've got the right one, but shaggy ink caps are meant to be one of the tastiest mushrooms you go. And I'm not going full on to this, but there is equipment involved in all this foraging malarkey. They've got special mushroom knives that have this curved blade on one end and a little brush for brushing off all the woodland bits and insects and stuff. They're very flashy, to be honest, and about 20, 30 quid. So I'm not buying one. I'm not going to go full into it and buy all the gear because, as you know, I'm a minimalist. I don't like buying all the gear. I've got an old knife that I'll use for now. And you can also get foraging baskets, and they're made of wicker and have like these straps so you can wear them. And I thought, when I watched, I thought it was a bit over the top, but there's a good reason for this, because it means any mushrooms that you picked, the spores drop out of the bottom of the basket and it's reseeded everywhere. Anyway, so on with this. Anyway, this episode's Foraging Tales. Just I always say this week, isn't it? But it's fortnightly. And I was in the woods last week and I was walking past an oak tree, and at the base of the tree was a small brown frilly sort of thing. So I photographed it and went home to find an ID, and it's an uncommon one, and it's called hen of the woods. Now, I've heard of chicken of the woods, but there's also a hen of the woods. And the article said it's not mistakable for anything else. So I took it home and fried it up. And you know what? It was absolutely lovely. And I mixed it with the eggs from our rescue hens, because I do eat eggs from our rescue hens. And I made it into an omelette that I have during the week. And it was very nice indeed. And the interesting thing was, this hen of the woods, it sort of looked like ladies' bits, So I've talked in the past about all the phallic mushrooms that look like men's bits. So I got to thinking, a mushroom's male, fungus female, mushroom male, fungus female. And it's a bit of a wild theory, I know. So I actually looked it up. I put the terms into Google, mushroom male, fungus female. And it, guess what came up? Well, not that. But it's interesting anyway. This is what it says. Not all fungi reproduce sexually, and many that do are isogamous. Thus, the term male and female do not apply to many members of the fungal kingdom. Homothallic species are able to mate with themselves. Well, that's handy. While heterothallic species, only isolates of opposite mating types can mate. And then it goes on to say, if humans were mushrooms, finding a date would be much easier. Whereas we muddle by with just two sexes. Ooh, that's a bit gender-phobic. We muddle by with just two sexes. The fungi have 36,000, all of which can mate with each other. God, it sounds like Club 18 to 30 for mushrooms, doesn't it? They can all mate with each other in a mysterious process involving underground fronds. So why don't humans have such a varied sex life? British scientists now believe they know the answer. Two sexes is exactly the right number if you reproduce by fusing cells. Larger numbers, anywhere from a handful of sexes up to 36,000, are only permissible if, like slime molds or mushrooms, you keep your partner's cell at arm's or frond's lengths. So there you go. So yeah, obviously, mushrooms and fungus are just the reproductive organs of the mycorrhizal network. But, some look quite phallic and some look quite feminine, and I was just wondering if they were, it's funny, isn't it? How is it funny how things resemble humans and humans resemble nature? It's not funny at all, is it? One of the things I read about foraging is you have to be careful where you pick mushrooms from, because they're very good at absorbing things. So mushrooms next to really, really busy roads will absorb pollutants and stuff. And fungus growing on yew trees are dangerous to eat as they absorb the poison. Yeah, they absorb the poisonous toxins of the yew tree. But this ability can be put to good use. And here's one example. Putting ideas into action, an Oregon-based restoration non-profit group, Ocean Blue Project, is harnessing the power of mushrooms to clean up pesticides and other pollutants that plague Oregon and National Waterway. Yes, mushrooms, it says. Yes, mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms have the filtering potential to break down oil, pesticides, and harmful bacteria. The test project launched on Sunday on the banks of the Sequoia Creek, a tributary to the Willamette River, using recycled burlap bags filled with used coffee grounds, straw, and yellow oyster mushroom spawn. The purpose of the unusual potpourri will be to harness the extremely effective filtering capabilities of mycelium. And then it goes on to quote Paul Stamets, so I've mentioned him quite a lot on this show. And I think I played a clip. Well, I did. I definitely played a clip from one of his talk. And it says, Paul Stamets, a leading expert on the power of mushrooms, has a word for the natural properties of fungi to fight human-made pollution. Myco-restoration, he calls it. He said, oyster mushrooms, for example, can digest the complex hydrocarbons in wood, so they can also be used to break down petroleum byproducts. Garden giants use their mycelia to trap and eat bacteria so they can filter E. coli from agricultural runoff. So mushrooms are fungus. They're not only tasty, but they're really, really useful. And that's why I'm a mycorrhizal cowboy. 'Cause fungus and mushrooms, I've heard they're really good for my health. Unless I end up poisoning myself. Right, time for some farm-related stuff or agriculture-related stuff. If you were listening a couple of years ago, you'd have heard me talking about the Dutch and their advanced agricultural ideas using cutting-edge technology. And it makes them the world's second largest exporter of agricultural products after the US, which is pretty incredible for a small country, isn't it, when you think about it? Anyway, the UK is finally getting its act together. Look, I know it would be great if everything was small-scale, organic, permaculture-based, all that stuff, but it's not going to happen overnight en masse, is it? So listen on. This is what it says. Bigger than the O2. Giant greenhouses to grow 20 tons of tomatoes a day. How big's the O2? I'm sure there's several millions of us that have never been to the O2. How big is it? Is it bigger than the O1 but smaller than the O3? I think we need to know. Anyway. So it's bigger than the O2. Low carbon structures fed by water treatment plants can grow 10% of homegrown crop. One of the UK's largest clean energy funds has revealed plans to invest 120 million quid in a pair of low carbon greenhouses in Norfolk and Suffolk. One in each, probably then, yeah? In eastern England, large enough to grow 10% of the UK's homegrown tomato crop. So 2 greenhouses can grow 10% of the UK's homegrown crop. The giant greenhouses, each one is 1.5 times the size of the O2 in London, whatever that means. They're going to be used to grow 20 tons of tomatoes a day using the heat from Anglian Water's water treatment facilities. The 7-metre tall glass structures will allow crops to grow vertically along guide wires. They will grow hydroponically from nutrient-rich water solutions instead of soil. Yeah, a bit like what the Dutch have been doing for a long time, yeah? The scheme will require the UK's largest heat pumps, which will channel heat from warm water into the greenhouses to help speed growth before returning cool water back to the river system. The carbon emissions from an on-site electricity plant will also be funneled into the greenhouses for the plants to absorb. Greencoat Capital, the fund behind the world's first plans, estimates that the greenhouses will produce vegetables with 1/4 of the carbon footprint of regular greenhouses. Yeah, which is great stuff, isn't it? The concept for the greenhouse project was created by British Swedish developer Osthouse Ventures to help reduce emissions from the agricultural sector, which is considered hard to treat area of the UK carbon cutting agenda. That's good, isn't it? That's good news.
The FrogbitBlog.
And while we're on the subject of the Dutch, well, I know it wasn't on the subject of the Dutch, but I threw a reference into the Dutch. That lazy twat Boyan Slat. That rhymes, doesn't it? It could be his theme tune, couldn't it? Boyan Slat, a lazy twat. Don't think he'd like it, to be fair, but Boyan, if you're listening, you can use that as a theme tune and you don't have to pay me, okay? I was talking about him a couple of years ago. In fact, one of my first episodes called Plastic Fantastic. Remember him, Boyan Slat, that smart-ass do-gooder Dutch kid? Oh, there's a name for his first album, Smart-Ass Do-Gooder Dutch Kid. Anyway, remember a couple of years ago, he only went and invented something to pick up all the ocean's plastic? Then we never heard from him again, did we? So he's probably sat on his fat ass for a couple of years in a Dutch cafe, in inverted commas, nudge, nudge, wing, wing, yeah, going, oh, I can't be arsed to clean up some plastic, maybe later, I want some crisps and cake now. Well, he's finally got off his lazy Dutch arse to fix the world, yeah? Floating boom finally retains debris from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, creator says. Yep, finally now you can be bothered, Boyan. Yep, a huge floating device designed by Dutch scientists, that's him, and his mates, to clean up an island of rubbish in the Pacific Ocean that is 3 times the size of France, has successfully picked up plastic from the high seas for the first time. Boyan Slat, the creator of the Ocean Cleanup Project, tweeted that the 600-metre-long free-floating boom had captured and retained debris from what is known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. During a previous 4-month trial, the boom broke apart and no plastic was collected, but since then, changes have been made to the design, including the addition of a parachute anchor to slow down the device's movement in the ocean, allowing for faster-moving plastic debris to float into the system. The latest trial began in June when the system was launched into a sea from Vancouver. The project was started in 2013. Yeah, see, it's 6 years ago he'd been sat on his lazy ass, and its design has undergone several major revisions. Okay, he was doing something. It is hoped the final design will be able to clean up half of the debris in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I don't know why I keep saying the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in a Scouse accent, but it seems to fit really, doesn't it? Anyway, the vast cleaning system is designed to not only collect discarded fishing nets and large visible plastic objects, but also microplastics, which is really important because they're the dangerous ones in a way, aren't they? The plastic barrier floating on the surface of the sea has 3-metre deep screen below it, which is intended to trap some of the 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic without disturbing the marine life below. The device is fitted with transmitters and sensors so it can communicate its position via satellites to a vessel that will collect the gathered rubbish every few months. Brilliant. This is what he said. We are now catching plastics. After beginning this journey 7 years ago, this first year of testing in the unforgivable environment of the high seas strongly indicates that our vision is attainable and that the beginning of our mission to rid the ocean of plastic garbage, which has accumulated for decades, is within our sights. So good on you, Boyan. I'll take back what I said about you being Boyan Slat, lazy twat.
Is it okay to talk about drugs? Is it okay? Don't do it anyway. Is it okay to talk
So I've been watching another documentary on Netflix. Is that all you do, Mr. Frogbit? Well, yeah, when I'm in and I just want to relax for half an hour, I'll watch a documentary on Netflix. This time it's about prohibition in America in the 1920s. And near the beginning of the program, the commentary said, the one thing that prohibition did was overnight turn millions of law-abiding citizens into criminals. And I thought, yeah, it's the same with the drug laws around the world, isn't it, really? And my own view on this, my own personal view, I'm not promoting the use of drugs at all. My own view is that recreational drug taking should be a health issue, not a criminal issue, and it doesn't work making things illegal. And just to prove the point, here in the UK, there's been a report out that says, this is the headline, Class A drug use amongst young adults at a 16-year high. 16-year high. They sound like really good drugs, don't they? They could have possibly used a better term than a 16-year high, but anyway, carry on. Class A drug use amongst young adults is at a 16-year high, driven by increases in powder cocaine and ecstasy use. Naeem Ed Eastwood, director of Drugs Charity Release, said cocaine production globally was the highest since records began, and street purity of the drug in the UK is at levels we have not witnessed before. The reality was that our current drug laws, you sound like I'm on drugs there, our current drug laws do not deter use, Eastwood said. She added, moreover, with cocaine-related deaths at a record high, with 637 recorded fatalities in England and Wales, 170% increase in the last 10 years, we need to urgently reform our drug laws, and we need better drug education, don't we? Ending criminal sanctions for possession of drugs will help save lives and protect young people from the damage of criminalisation. Too true. A spokesperson for Transform Drugs Policy Foundation said, given the government's narrow focus on reducing use, the rise in young people's Class A drug use since 2012 looks very bad. Yep, so young people are actually dying because of the current drug laws. But hey-ho, the tabloids wouldn't be happy, would they? Remember, kids, as long as you're buying your drugs from pharmaceutical company, everything's fine. And this is, just before I finish, this is an interesting story. 3 Spanish police officers who were thrown into the sea when their boat crashed early during a high-speed chase were pulled to safety by the drug smugglers they were chasing. The unexpected rescue happened on Friday after a police vessel pursuing a speedboat with 4 people on board that was suspected of transporting drugs in waters off southern coast of Spain, policemen said. During the chase, the 2 vessels collided, causing 3 officers to fall into the seas as their boat span out of control. The gesture did not spare them, however, when police found 3 tons of hashish in the water nearby. Well, it might have just been a coincidence. How did they know it belonged to them? They were arrested for drug trafficking, police statement said, indicating that more than 80 bundles of hash had been recovered from the sea. So they stopped to help the police, and then they get arrested and probably spend their life in prison for a bit of marijuana. That's a bit mean, isn't it?
Gonna do it anyway.
Doing good eco things. Rich people doing good eco things. Rich people doing good eco things. It's not where you Right, this is a really good example of rich people doing good eco things. The billionaire owners of Fiji Water have made a record-breaking $750 million donation towards climate change research. Now, I presume Fiji Water is a type of bottled water. So basically, let me get this right. Basically, you used to make plastic bottles and fill them with the free resources, but now you feel a bit guilty, eh? Is that right? Anyway, seriously, Stuart and Linda Resnick, who co-own the wonderful company whose brands include Fiji Water and Pom Wonderful, whatever that. I mean, I presume these are American because I've never heard of Pom Wonderful or Fiji Water. Anyway, they pledged the money to the California Institute of Technology. The donation is the largest ever made towards climate change research and the second largest donation ever made to a US academic institution. The fund will go towards Caltech's Breakthrough campaign and will support investigators as they pursue research in solar science, climate science, energy, biofuel, decomposable plastics, water and environmental resources, and ecology and biosphere engineering. Yeah, Mr. Resnick said he made the pledge because the world needs breakthrough innovations. In order to comprehensively manage the climate crisis, we need breakthrough innovations, the kind that will only be possible through significant investment in universities research. Science and bold creativity must unite to address the most pressing challenges facing energy, water, and sustainability. So that's good, isn't it? Well done, you two. Compare that to the billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, whatever his name is. And they spend all their time avoiding paying taxes, don't they? Why can't they just spend a chunk of their income on their untaxed income on things that will actually benefit the planet? Surely they don't need all that money, do they? So anyway, I think this is a great example of
Rich people doing good eco things. It's not where you're from, it's where you're at. And you can't help it if you're a posh rich twat.
Right, so I think that'll do for this week. Thank you very much for listening once again. Good luck if you're taking part in any of the Extinction Rebellion climate protests or any sort of action that you might be taking out there in the world. Have a good fortnight. Thanks for listening. Remember, it's available on YouTube as well if that's your thing. Well, that'll do. Okay, bye.
The FrogbitBlog. FrogbitBlog. The FrogbitBlog.